Thus far, my colleagues and I have identified that academic underachievement is right now the foremost problem that we have here in our school, pertaining to persistence and grit within our students. Some of these causes we found are mostly related to classroom goals are not being set at an attainable level or somewhere that we think is reasonable for our students to achieve. And to combat this problem, we compiled a list of 20 potential solutions that we think would all work potentially to solve this problem. However, we needed to really narrow that down and just pick one that will be most effective pertaining to our current situation. We did develop the set of criteria that we use to kind of narrow everything down and see, how can we frame this so that it fits our school the best and how our students can respond positively to this change. And then hopefully raise their academic scores and heighten their sense of persistence in achieving their academic goals. Of these criteria, I have here in front of me, and you'll see this as well, I believe it's page 3 or 4 of your packet. Please feel free to flip to that at this time. These are the 4 main points that I used or reused to select this. Is the solution supported by current research? Can the solution be connected with real-life situations? Does the solution allow for a consistent and measurable form of assessment? And does the solution allow for student input and creativity? As our PLC group went through this, we kind of realized that these are the 4 most important things that our students need to be successful as far as when they're completing their homework, academic assignments, that type of thing. And after using this criteria as a framework to narrow down our list, we decided that the best solution that we have in our list here is going to be using authentic assessment. And with authentic assessment, I think this goes hand in hand as well. In your packet, you'll see that I actually, as the solutions, I highlighted 2 of them to be our one solution, which kind of doesn't seem like it makes sense, but trust me, it does. With the authentic assessment along comes with the project-based learning. And that's more of the method of teaching that we will plan to use, or at least bringing in training or in some way to get all of our teachers to be on the same page with that. It's really going to be the best way that our students can succeed. And that meets that criteria of pertaining to real life experiences. Yes. So a lot of times we will look at stuff and go, okay, why are we doing this in school? Or we've had student feedback saying, I don't really get why we're doing this. And I think the biggest thing is, having that connection that there is a reason that this is happening, or there's a reason that we're teaching you this. It's a life skill. And I think giving them a way to be creative, give their own input, really comes with that project-based learning and how they will really succeed and be able to show their knowledge that they've learned the content that we are teaching them. Over the course of the next 3 years, we're going to use these 3 steps in order to implement this. Hopefully, within the 3 years, we should be able to do that. And first, we need to start with collecting data. So analyzing student grades in all content areas, and just seeing where we are at currently, just as a base level, and then communicating within our teams of teachers to see how the data is going to affect each of our content areas, and what it means to the fellow teachers and all the other content areas as well, so that we can work together to try and solve this problem as a team. Second step is going to be having common planning time for teachers of teams to meet and share ideas, strategies, and tips and tricks for one another. So one of the things that we also talked about in these steps, and that's actually the 3rd step, is starting to use backwards design as a curriculum assessment. And that's pertaining to one of the turning points. I forget which number it is, but curriculum and assessment is one of the turning points that we can use to support our decision here for sure. And what backwards design is essentially going to do is we're going to plan our lessons, like it says, going backwards. So we're going to take the classroom objective or goal that is not currently being reached and revamp our thinking of how we're going to reach that goal. So starting with, designing our lesson plans to fit the goal versus designing the lessons to get to the goal. and that should solve our problem in the long run, we believe. And I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Obviously, there is a problem of underachievement in our classrooms, and our research has demonstrated that this is due in part to a lack of grit in some of our students. This is not the students' faults, however. Students do not automatically display grit. It's something that needs to be taught to them. As teachers, it is important that we implement practices that help to foster this characteristic in our students. Until we implement practices that instill grit in our students, those who are struggling will continue to have difficulties reaching state and school standards. After acknowledging this need, we had to ask ourselves, in what ways might we instill persistence and grit in our students so that they may achieve the academic standards that we have set for them? Although there are many possible solutions to raise achievement by effectively fostering a sense of grit in students, one of the best ways is by implementing authentic and project-based assessment. Authentic assessment provides students with ways to demonstrate their knowledge in ways that pertain to life after school, and project-based assessment allows students to showcase their knowledge through a medium of their choice. In other words, it allows them to be tested solely on their understanding of a subject rather than on their test-taking abilities. Both of these methods aim to increase students' grit by targeting their interests and using them to increase their motivation. Research finds that students are more successful and persistent when they are highly interested in the subject. It also finds that they are more persistent if they can find a sense of importance or real-life application in the content material. Students will perform better and be more successful if they are interested in the content and if they are able to showcase their knowledge in a way that pertains more closely to real life. Authentic assessment aims to do exactly that, allowing students to demonstrate their knowledge in a way that extends beyond school and the classroom. Traditional test-taking does not pertain very closely to real life, so it is not encouraging for the students to work towards. By creating assessments that apply the course material to real life, students will develop meaningful connections and be able to apply what they are learning to issues in the future. This will not only improve their performance in school, but it will also teach them to effectively apply what they're learning to real situations, as well as provide them with important skills and problem-solving benefits for their futures. In addition to this, it is important for us to implement project-based assessment in order to create further meaningful connections between schoolwork and students' lives. By creating project-based assessments, students will be able to showcase their knowledge in a way that is meaningful to them. This will make learning much more interesting and fun for students because they'll be able to demonstrate their knowledge through a medium that they're passionate about. When students are passionate about their work, they're much more likely to persevere and persist in it. If students are interested in their work, they will be actively engaged in it too, and they will be significantly more likely to be persistent and successful. Through authentic and project-based assessment, we will be fostering grit in our students and contributing in a positive way to their future success. Although we want to implement these methods into our teaching as soon as possible, these implementations will not happen overnight. It'll take a lot of planning and scheduling in order to fully implement these methods into our classrooms. Although it will take a lot of planning before these solutions are fully implemented, we want to begin to introduce these concepts this year because they are so beneficial to our students. We want to get started right away. In order to introduce these techniques into our classrooms, we want one teacher from each content area to incorporate authentic assessment into at least one unit each quarter, and we want each teacher from each content area to also incorporate one project-based assessment during the fourth quarter of this school year. This will give teachers an idea of how these forms of assessment work in their classrooms and how students respond to them. It will also give students the opportunity to become more familiar with these types of assessments before it becomes a fully integrated part of the curriculum. Once teachers have had the opportunity to plan and implement these methods, they will have a better idea of how they can plan and adjust their lesson plans to accommodate for these methods and benefit students more fully.
Into my students' curriculum. When you say it'll take too much time, does that mean that my student is going to be like a guinea pig? Like, how much time is this going to take? And is my student's learning going to have to go through some rough patches in order to get there? Like, what's the point of that for me and for my student then? Also, do teachers not communicate already? Do you not talk to each other already on your team? You say that this is going to implicate more communication amongst your team. Is that not already the case? That's confusing to me. And then lastly, what is authentic assessment and what is project-based learning? Like, you're explaining to me what they'll do for my student, which sounds great. It really does. But what exactly is it? what are my students going to, or what are my children going to actually be doing? And what difference does that have from just regular tests? In addition to that, what difference does that have from like life lessons that I try to teach them? Because you say it's implicating real life scenarios. How is that different from the life lessons that I teach them as a parent? These are my questions.
Okay, so we're actually going to start from the last question that you asked. What is authentic assessment and what is project-based learning? What are your kids going to be doing? Essentially, authentic assessment and project-based learning, that means that we are going to try to not only get the kids to realize that they can apply what they're learning to real-world problems, but at the same time, we're going to be assessing to see if they can. That is what they're being graded on. You know, these go hand in hand in the way of, for example, something they may do in science class. I'm not a science teacher, but science class, physics, they'll go to a theme park and try to measure, again, not a science teacher, the velocity that a roller coaster takes them, or the height or the trajectory, whatever. They'll do something like that, and that will then get the kids to be able to say like, hey, I could be a scientist and create roller coasters. How cool is that? But in addition, we will be assessing if they can do that and if they've learned what they're supposed to be able to tell us. Now, I know you might be thinking, haven't we always done projects? Yes, you did projects when you were in school, we did projects when we were in school, but it's different just because it's trying to get them into the world and out of the classroom, because the classroom really should just be the place where they sit for a little bit for instruction and then they take that instruction and run with it. Teacher communication, yes, teachers do talk to each other, but this is just going to be a little bit different, because when you have projects like we're trying to integrate into the curriculum and the different assessments we're trying to integrate, teachers can work together so that one project pertains to two subjects. For example, if the students are reading a book on Anne Frank in their English class and I'm their history teacher, I can then teach them about the Holocaust, and they can mix those two things together and they can formulate in their minds like what that means and how Anne Frank goes into what I'm teaching them without me actually saying, hey, this is where Anne Frank would be, and all of that kind of stuff. This creates this problem-solving method inside of them, and that's the kind of communication that we're trying to integrate with teachers. Final question, too much time. No, your student is not going to be a guinea pig. You have to realize when we're integrating this kind of curriculum, we are going to be watching your students so carefully, and they're going to be learning and doing stuff constantly. It's not going to be a matter of us just assessing and taking data, and then the next group of kids is going to actually benefit from this project. This is us trying our hardest to get your students out of the classroom and into the world, and also just going back to the original going back to the original goal that we're trying to set. It's going to integrate grit into who they are, and it's going to just really dig deep into their brains, and we're hoping that this is just going to benefit not only our students but also what you see in their education. Thank you.